Hello, all you ghosts and goblins out there. I'm Ashton,
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sean.
and we are the Night Scholars, exploring the mystifying world of cryptids, ghosts, ghouls, and all things supernatural. Today, we will be talking about everyone's favorite Aswang, the Manananggal. How are you guys doing today?
Better than I was earlier this week.
I'm doing pretty good. Episode sounds a little different today, though.
Not sure why
Yeah,
that
I
would be.
mean, I'm not gonna point fingers. Maybe you guys can play this game as you listen, but somebody doesn't know how to pronounce the name of this very well.
I'm
Is it
pointing
you?
to Sean.
How dare you? To accusing the
So,
anthropologist of not knowing how to pronounce it.
man, that would be pretty sad. I think you would have to get your degree taken away from you.
Eh, that's fair.
Hey, I paid
All
good
right.
money for that degree.
You paid money for it? I haven't paid did anything for it yet.
Yeah, to print it.
You can get whatever degree you want to, so long as you're confident enough.
That is true.
All right. So before we get too far along, who wants to give a description of this creature? Or tell us what it is, rather.
So the Manananggal is a Filipino, we could call it creature. It's an Oswan, which is an evil being. Normally, that's what that title is uh, referring to. And basically, what it is it is a woman, normally older, who is able to separate her upper torso from her lower torso and sprout big bat-like wings that she uses to fly into the night to, well, do what she does. We'll get into that later. She's also often described as having a bit of her uh in intestines or guts hanging below the torso where it is split. She also has a lawn. Now, correct me if pronounce this wrong. Proboscis ton that she uses to, well, again, do what she does. We'll get into that later.
Close enough.
Yeah, that's a big word for me. I just have tubular, so you tried.
Tubular, bro. Yeah, man.
And here we have an example of the West Virginia Valley Girl.
Oh no.
Portrayed by a man.
Oh yeah.
That is quite the description. Um, Now most of the research I found said it separates by its intestines. Like that's the hook between its torso and its legs. Did you find anything different?
I have seen that. Uh, but also that doesn't quite make sense because you like small intestines. You get like what 20 feet, give or take, in the average human. So it
2030.
wouldn't it be able to go very far from its legs, which would make it very impractical for it to fly throughout the night hunting.
Uh, I also found references to a tick bird that usually accompanies it and helps it hunt. What about you? Did you find anything?
Interesting. I didn't find a bird that accompanied it to help it hunt, more so of a that is the noise that they make whenever they fly. So I have down that kind of like one of the indicators that they're nearby is that you can hear eerie noises as they take flight, which sounds like either walk walk, talk talk, or kick kick. And it resembles the bird noises, and it's a warning to those in the vicinity. And there are different variations of this thing in different regions of the Philippines, and one of them is actually known as the walk walk because it was named after the sound that it makes. And that one's actually interesting to go back to the whole like intestines question because the Waray or the walk walk does not separate from its lower self.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like
Yeah,
its legs are still connected, or it's connected. The intestines are still connected.
the legs are still connected. It does not rip itself in half.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. And this one is not so selective in its prey. It also will attack people who are alone outdoors at night.
Hmm. So it doesn't normally go after sleeping people.
It can. At some point, we will need to break this topic. So, Andrew, I liked your kind of like warning for this episode. If you want to go ahead and say it, so we can get the disclaimer out of the way.
All right. So before we really get into what this thing does, I do want to give a bit of a content warning. Um, One for body horror, of the creature itself, like something splitting itself asunder, splitting itself in half. That's kind of horrifying, as well as the tubular ton or proboscis ton, um, as well as what it does to living beings. Which we're gonna get into exactly what it does, but just be warned beforehand that it's what it does isn't pleasant.
That's a mild way of putting it. Unpleasant is a good term, though.
All right, so now that we got that out of the way, tell me what it does.
Let me go into it because you already kind of did like a good description on it, Andrew. But so while it is out with or without all of its intestines hanging, um, it is typically a creature who is seen as human during the daytime, as we've kind of seen with a lot of the cryptids that we've covered on this podcast, like the Rougarou, for instance. But in this particular case, the Manananggal will go to a distinctive area, such as a banana grove or a deserted field where people will store water jugs and where they can wash dishes. So they put a ointment on their skin that is very specific. It's very ill smelling of chicken dung, and it also has coconut oil, decayed human flesh or blood, and it is typically stored in a bamboo container or bottle.
Hmm.
And they will rub this all over themselves and recite a special incantation in order to transform into the Manananggal, and it will fly, which typically there is like a sound, like we've talked about, that kind of resembles a bird as it separates from its lower half and flies to an area with its very distinctive like smell or like sense of smell. Like it has a very keen sense of smell,
Mm-hmm.
and it's specifically, now there are variations, but one thing that is pretty common across board is that it is looking for pregnant women and will use its tubular tongue or whatever Andrew said earlier to descend, typically. So in rural regions of the Philippines, which is where this is most prominent, they still have houses that have like kind of bamboo housing, and it's able to kind of land on top of these roofs and use its tongue to kind of, and talons on its fingers, to be able to rip open the belly of a pregnant woman, and it does eat the fetus.
Does it eat the entire fetus or just the heart? I've seen conflicting information.
I'm not sure, and like honestly, with the tongue, it also sounds like they could be sucking everything out of the fetus instead of eating it whole.
That's true.
Yeah, the thing I've seen the most common is they use it to suck the heart, specifically out of the fetus, which uh is like the story of this thing a lot of times was used to like explain miscarriages a lot,
Hmm.
which makes sense. Now it will, however, sometimes also go after just people who are asleep. Still normally women from the look of it, but it'll sometimes settle for a heart or a stomach or a liver.
Yes. And if it cannot find a pregnant woman to eat, is how I'm going to phrase that, it can also, or it has been known to eat lone travelers or drunk wanderers. And a lot of times, not just for this creature to possibly give some reason for miscarriages, but it's also very much used kind of like how in the United States we have the boogeyman, like don't go out at night or else the boogeyman will get you.
Hmm.
This is very much a warning that several Filipino children do know about, and it's just like, okay, like I can't go outside at night or else the Manananggal will get me. And so it's kind of used as like they have a lot darker of a folklore, I think, than we do.
And it depends. And especially here in Appalachia, you hear a lot. Don't go in the woods at night. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of
What do
We just
scary
you
don't
do on
stuff.
quite
the winter night?
Yeah, we just don't quite go as extreme as this, but I mean, it
No, we don't go into the
makes
detail that this does.
right. Like, whereas they're just like, um, it eats organs and blood and flesh and sputum and organs and all of you can see all of his intestines hanging from it. Like, we're just like, this unknown entity will get you in the dark. And they're like, no, this like terrifying creature specifically, that's like the most horrendous thing that you've ever seen in your life will get you. Although what's interesting to me is that depending on what region you are in, the Manananggal is either still described as being beautiful in this form, like it's like the face is still beautiful, and like other forms, it's like absolutely hideous. And I thought that was interesting.
Isn't that very what's that one we did a few weeks ago with the smiling lady?
Yukiona.
Yukio. Okay, what's Yukio? That's what I was gonna say. How fascinating that the beauty and the ugliness are interchangeable depending on where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I also see here that she will allegedly also at times seduce men with her beauty, lure them into private areas, and then eat them alive. Which that's kind
That
of
is
metal, but
Not as metal is one of the ways of protecting yourself against them. I saw in some accounts that if you have a stingray tail, you
I
can use
saw
that to
that
defend
too.
yourself.
now,
Yeah,
well,
it's
hold
definitely
on.
afraid of the stingrays.
Like
Specifically, it has to be fashioned into a whip.
interesting.
That I didn't
Yeah,
see. I didn't see that.
it's
Yes,
not how you kill them, but you can injure it with one. And
yes.
Ah,
sometimes even if the monogoncologist sees it and display in your home, then it can act as a deterrent.
look, as an Irwin, I should be very careful when it comes to stingray tails.
I agree.
That you said.
God, rest well, Steve Irwin. We miss you.
Indeed. Your kids are adorable though.
Oh, they are. I love watching the show. Like the family's like taking over the. It's great. His son looks just like him.
Yeah. Hey,
Now,
so do we want to talk about the uh different form or different names of it? Like I just have like a small list, but I did think it was kind of interesting the variations from region to region.
Yeah,
now,
the only one I
yeah. The only thing I have is uh the walk walk the Aswan,
that's
uh
one.
and then the Monongal itself.
Yeah, and I think that technically all of the variations would fall under the Oswanger.
Now Aswan itself is more of a generic term for a lot of the evil creatures. Which, like, if you come down my way, it's kind of like how we refer to things as a haint, right? It's not a specific thing, but it is a group of things.
Right.
It's
Hank
a
Good.
yeah.
Yeah, so what differentiates an Oswang, it's known to have a shape-shifting ability that allows them to transform into either animals, humans, or other creatures of the night. There are two different types of them, either the walking or the flying, and the Manananggal, like I mentioned earlier, uses an ointment, and this ointment is specifically used by the ones who are able to use flight.
See,
Terrifying
that's
ointment, by the
interesting
way.
too. Which and you said it's uh chicken done.
It smells like chicken dung. I'm
Okay.
not entirely sure. I did not look it up, but and there's a book by Frank Lynch called The Aswang Inquiry that goes into details on that.
Okay. So
I was not able to find a free
I
copy of it, so I don't
so
have it.
I actually have a bit of experience with this. So I used to
Okay,
be a lab technician at a coal testing laboratory, right?
right.
Okay.
And we every once in a while, I don't know, once a month or so, we get in a shipment of what is called poultry litter, which chicken crap. So that's what it is. And it is actually also used as it can be considered a type of coal. It is also burned to create energy. It is sometimes classified as a type of coal. And
Okay.
let me tell you, when you burn it, man, does it smell? Yeah. When you
Yeah,
burn it, it is not a pleasant smell.
yeah, that is why they make sure to be by, like, either water or a place where you can wash dishes whenever they transform so they can rinse it off of their body.
No, really? That's interesting.
Did
Yeah,
not see
because, I
that, but that
mean,
makes sense.
if they walk around with that, they're going to be discovered. Like, I don't think anything happens to them when they're discovered like the Rougarou, but it's a
Yeah.
very distinctive smell.
You don't want too many people asking, "You stepped in what? Behind whose barn?" You know.
Yeah. So I had mentioned earlier how there are different variations depending on region. So in the Eastern Visayas, it is referred to as the Abat or the Awak, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing those correctly. But this variation, it does not grow wings on its back, and instead its arms are the ones that turn into leathery bat-like wings, and its big fiery eyes almost bulge out of their sockets. And because it is referred to as the Aswang na lipad, which I actually think is a pretty common derivative of this. And this one feeds on the livers of a fresh corpse, which I want to get back to this one, or of farm animals, and it does not eat living persons.
That's
Well,
interesting.
that's nice.
I hadn't
Yeah,
heard of one that went after farm animals. That's
That's very cool of it.
yeah.
yes. Um, Man, now I want to talk about this one. We are gonna go into different ones, which I still have, and we can go into this, but the fresh corpses. I have a lot of detail on this, but I'm also willing to pass the mic to one of you guys if you want to go into the CIA's involvement with the Manananggal and the Philippines.
No, I wasn't able to find anything CIA. We're usually good at finding the conspiracies.
No, it's
Andrew,
all
do you
you.
have this one
I don't.
on me? Okay. So the CIA and the Philippines. So a little bit of history to back this up. During World War II, the Philippine Islands got beaten up horrendously, and specifically by the Japanese. And from this, a resistance group was formed called the PKP, or I don't know if they were formed, but they were very instrumental in organizing the resistance against the Japanese during World War II. And they, along with other peasant groups, formed an anti-Japanese guerrilla force called the Hukbalahap, or the Huks for short.
Okay.
And they were still very big in the political structure after the war, but when the US kind of also did, I'm not a history buff, so please correct me on some of these details. But basically, the US was over in the Philippines, and there was a Bell Trade Act that basically gave the US a lot of rights over Philippine industries and economy. And the PKP was very against this. And they had a lot of they had a lot of strikes that they were doing. And the current president at the time, President Roxas, was unable to control them. And then the next president, Carino, stepped in. He was also very ineffective against stopping them, which is when the CIA came in and they decided that instead of using typical force, that they would do one of their fun experiments of 1950s and would work with the Filipino like fear of the Manananggal and the Aswang, and they would take bodies of the Hucks and they would add 2 puncture holes into them to make it look like the Manananggal was responsible, hang them by their heels so that the blood would drain before being dumped on the side of the road in a busy area in the province. And because of all of these, like, sightings of these bodies that looked like they were killed by something supernatural, and it was believed to be the Aswang, um, the battleground ended up being seen as haunted, and they eventually, ceded to the presidency in the US involvement.
That is fantastic.
Y Yeah, like, I was looking up a completely different story and trying to get details on it, and that one came up. I'm just like, "Hold up,
Like I knew a
the
little bit
CIA
about
used folklore."
yeah. Like I knew a little bit about the US's involvement in the Philippines, which I'm not gonna get political in that, but wow, yeah. Yeah, so they really just pulled a big psyop, huh?
Yep.
Yeah,
And it worked.
so
That's wow.
yeah, so the Aswang na lipad, the one that is known for feeding on fresh corpses, I'm pretty sure is very much the one that was seen throughout this as a specific
Yeah.
variation of the Manananggal.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah. Like, because there's just the Philippines has had a very rough go, so it's
Yeah.
not surprising that it worked. It's just crazy that that was the tactic chosen and that it
Hey,
worked.
if it works, it works.
Yeah. So anyways, then we have the Baroka, which is an eagle-winged Manananggal that is able to retain her beauty, and some depictions see it as having 4 dog legs, a woman's face, and eagle's wings, which I'm kind of impressed that it's able to stay pretty
Yeah.
while looking like that. Um, and it has red skin and dresses in red, and it either possesses people or takes the form of a person and kills sleeping individuals to eat their flesh and innards, which I think the Bruca is kind of what you were seeing, Andrew, with the sleeping persons.
Yes.
And then the last one that I have, we've already touched on it, is just the walk walk that um will also kill people who are alone outdoors at night.
Mhm.
And this one does not separate, and it kills by wrapping its legs tightly around the victim's waist while attempting to strangle him or her.
Wow.
Perfect workspace to die.
Yeah.
Right? Like that one just seems like a human just going around and being a serial killer and people being like, that's the walk walk.
I don't know. Having my fetus ripped out by my tongue by the tongue of some bat demon creature sounds much more terrifying than, oh, I'm just gonna get strangled to death with the legs.
Right. I did see
Pretty
that
sure.
one of the best defenses against a Manananggal is to make it so they can't grab you by your lower legs.
Mhm.
One thing I saw that was pretty common when it came to defense was a jar of ash on the roof of your house. Like it would be wary of that
A jar of what at the top of your house?
ash. It didn't specify what type, but it said if you put ash on the top of your house, it'd be less likely to attack your house. Uh,
Interesting.
Saw that a couple times.
So we got stingray tails, we have ash, and then of course you can't forget the classic salt and garlic.
That's what I was
Yes.
about to say. Also, don't forget the classic bamboo shaft through the back.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also saw daggers, which are also
Saw
same.
daggers a
I'm
couple.
I'm also weak to bamboo shafts and daggers being stabbed into my back.
The dagger's the only thing I saw about those is that it would slow them down, like that it would annoy them long enough for you to be able to throw the salt and garlic at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um,
specifically at its
do
lower
you pref-
torso, specifically
do
at its legs.
You have to
Yeah, that's what.
find
yes,
its legs.
Yeah, you find its legs, you pour the salt and garlic on it, and it'll die in the sunlight because it can't return to its body.
or you could just hide the body is something else that I've seen,
Yeah.
like the lower
Uh,
half so they can't find it.
You guys said something, about the salt, the garlic. Also, apparently, raw rice deters it, which I mentioned in previous episodes about how like throwing rice out makes it stop. I believe I said to count it, which isn't exactly accurate. It just really does not like uncooked rice.
Interesting, because I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of rice fields, and unless I'm just totally messing up my topography, but isn't there like a lot of rice fields also in the Philippines?
I mean, I
believe
imagine
so.
there's a good bit of them. Yeah.
Well, if there's
So,
not, it makes sense why they're more central to the Philippines and don't go to some of the other island countries.
Yeah.
so,
Oh.
raw rice good for banishing demons and fixing your phone.
So, my question for you guys is what do you think a gun would do?
Annoy it.
That I don't know. I mean,
Well, it depends. Are you gonna go like underworld style where you make a bullet out of garlic and salt? Because that would probably work.
That probably would, because I'm about to do a shameless plug to this series that I do on YouTube called Taylor Swift But Make It Horror. And I'm allowed to do this right now because this is my birthday episode where you want a story about the Manananggal mixed with Welcome to New York by Taylor Swift, then you can check it out on my channel on YouTube under Phantom Ashes because they attempt to use a gun and about to Sean's point, all it does is annoy them.
That might be the best shameless plug we've had yet.
Indeed, happy birthday to me. Go watch my shit. So, Sean, you were
That
making an interesting point earlier where you said that you saw this as a curse.
yeah. One thing I kept running across in my attempts to locate the origins of this thing was that it isn't born, it's made that you become uh Manananggal through most times consuming the black chick in the throat. Like it passes as that from an infected woman to another woman, and they become the new creature. There was, but they also said if you could remove that chick and destroy it, that the curse would be broken. Did you find anything
Yeah.
about this? Because I found a lot of references to a black chick.
so what I have doesn't mention destroying the chick, but it does
Yeah.
talk about getting it out of the person, which you have to be fairly quick about because you have to do it before it reaches adulthood, before the chicken reaches adulthood, which
Right.
also implies that the chicken lives in the belly of the Manananggal. No,
Yeah. I
Manananggal. Sorry.
There you
I
go.
did see something where they I don't really know. I only saw it once, and so I wasn't sure if it was just a fan-made story or if it was more origin story of this woman who was betrayed by her to-be husband who was cheating on her, and she basically was trying to get revenge, and I can't quite remember, but I think she was basically ended up making a deal with a demon in order to be able to get revenge on this man that wronged her. And she kept, like, just feeling, like, all of these, like, strange, like, hunger pains, and while she was seeking out this woman, and something happens with the 2 of them where she's able to get her revenge, but she can't, satiate her hunger at all. That is until she ends up coming across a pregnant woman, and that was when she did what the Manananggal is known for doing. And then from then on, she only could feel fed if she ate them.
Hmm.
And I also saw other depictions where they are believed to have families and they would bring victims home to feed their kids.
Wow.
That is decidedly disturbing because I could not find any references. It always a lone creature.
It's kind of like a little bit like hag like, right? Where they normally live in a
Mhm.
coven.
Yeah, except this
Yeah.
doesn't really seem like a coven and more of a it's just able to reproduce and the kids have the same
Hmm. Okay.
That's
curse
a,
infection.
yeah. And this is interesting. I also forgot about this one. Uh, this goes along with Andrew's point that the chicken lives in it because I did see that it eats the inside of the creature, or while the creature is also hunting, so it's being devoured at the same time it's eating.
Yeah.
That might be one of the reasons it eats is to feed the thing inside of it.
And also apparently that's how they stay alive. Like the chicken doing that is somehow keeps them alive. I'm not sure how, but that's what I saw.
It sounds incredibly painful. And how does the chicken not fall out when it separates itself?
Stomach's up higher than you think.
Yes, that's fair.
It's like right at the bottom of your ribs, which don't go down probably as far as you think either. You got like a good
Yes.
foot from no 6 inches to a foot from like where it separates to up where the stomach actually is.
Now, here's the question. Since Andrew, you've mentioned before you're stronger than the average person, would you try and use this thing's intestines and to sling it around and get away from it?
I don't think it would let me get that close. I mean, it can just like kind of fly and swoop at me, and that's unfortunately swooping is something I don't have a great defense against.
That's fair.
Yeah. What I
Just trying
think
to picture.
is interesting, like, apart from them just having a keen sense of smell,
Hmm.
there are depictions of this thing, as mentioned earlier, that it disguises itself or that it is human during the daytime. And during the day, it is seen as a beautiful maiden with attractive light skin and dark hair. And while it is in its human form, it can go from like village to village, kind of seeking out like their next meal that way. And there's absolutely no deterrent for it for like going into churches or wet markets and like other places. Because I do think it's interesting that like, you have some creatures where you invoke the power of God and it like rebels these things or repels these things. But this one, there was a attack in the 19th or not yeah, there was an attack in the 1930s in a town called, Lukban in Quezon, where people tried to use crosses and it did not work.
Hmm.
Or
That's
maybe
interesting.
it worked. Yeah. Or I guess maybe it worked, but they also used pepper and garlic, so it's kind of seen as
So
ineffective, but
so it laughs in God's face, in other words. That's terrifying.
yeah, basically. Like, I don't really have any incident that happened inside of a church, but I do have something that happened at a teachers' convention.
Oh,
Ooh, when was that? I might have seen that.
So I have a full paragraph on it, and this
Go ahead.
comes from the Aswang Syncrasy in Philippine folklore, and it says, in 1930, a teacher seminar was held in Lucban, Quezon. All towns in Quezon province sent delegates. These were housed in the elementary school buildings a kilometer from the town proper. The seminar lasted 1 week. The night after the delegates arrived, the townspeople living near the school and compound heard peculiar noises of flying wings and the familiar tick 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 of the tick tick bird. It was a firm belief in the town that whenever the tick tick was heard at night, that there was an Aswang around. The next night, some brave folks peeped out of their windows when they heard the sound of wings. They were horrified when they saw a flock of black winged creatures flying in the dark of the night. The creatures had human heads, but half of their bodies from the waist down were missing. The people presumed that what they saw were the Manananggal. The following morning, people at Lakban, who were in charge of feeding the delegates, observed them closely. They noticed that some of the delegates refused to eat spicy food and were very fond of these two dishes that I cannot pronounce, but I know Filipinos have dishes that are basically blood. So I'm assuming
Mhm.
they're talking about that. They also noticed that these delegates had deep armpits and could not look directly into other people's eyes. From that night till semester ends, or the seminar ends, the people hung spices like garlic and black pepper outside of their windows, and they placed crosses on top of their roofs. When the seminar was finished and all of the delegates had gone home, the peace of night returned to the town.
Hmm.
That's certainly interesting.
Right, which is kind of terrifying to think that uh these creatures were disguising themselves as teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, if they like kids, it's I guess that they can settle for ones that are born, and I guess it would work. But what
Yeah,
a
or they're likely to have young mothers who are likely to get pregnant anytime soon.
ooh, that works too.
'Cause I don't know
This
about all of the Philippines, but I know, like, for a while, like, I mean, Catholicism, at least when my grandfather was living there, was the main denomination. I'm sure that it probably still is, and for a good part, they don't really believe in birth control. So there's a lot of
mm,
kids and not very much food to feed them.
so basically let them become the food.
I mean, if we're going back to the this is a way to describe starvation, or like to kind of like comfort or give an explanation for why children were dying and why miscarriages were happening, then it kind of is part of starvation, like not being enough um food to feed the family. Like I know my grandfather lost two siblings because of starvation.
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't this a cheery episode?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Really.
really is. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. This one is
So,
a dark one. So we had the
but
content warning.
not suitable for young children. Literally.
Literally.
Uh, so in all of your research, what was the earliest reference to a Aswang or a Manangal that you were able to find?
I think you
Because I
had
was,
more origins than I do.
yeah, because the earliest I was able to find it was the Spanish wrote down stories is that they heard of it in the 16th century.
Yes.
But before that, it becomes a little bit of a verbal tradition, so it's a lot harder to track. So
Yeah.
it is older than the 16th century. So this thing is old. Well, probably as old as the Capri, but it
I
is
believe that.
Possibly.
I mean, I know that
Capri's old.
Aswang is kind of like their variation of the vampire,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's fair. I mean, half the things we've described are good are defense against a regular vampire. So
That's true.
these things basically are vampires. I guess you could stab Drac in the back with the bamboo shoot,
And yeah, it's kind of like a stake through the heart, right?
basically. But it also didn't mention stabbing it through the heart. It specifically said stabbing the thing in the back.
Yeah.
Which probably brings us back to thing Ashton told us earlier about betrayal,
Yeah.
and works as well as anything else, I guess.
Yeah.
I all I know is I definitely would not want to run into this thing.
No, no,
Nor would I.
they are pretty scary. Like, yeah, this is one of the ones that always interested me the most, where where like it separates itself, and then the top half of it flies around, wreaking all kinds of havoc. Like just the way it looks too. Like it is. Like, have you ever seen like the artist depictions of it? It is a
I
I'm
saw
looking
a
at one
few.
right now.
Yeah, it is a very creepy looking thing.
It is. There is no doubt that when you look upon it, you are going to die.
Eh,
Yeah,
that's
and,
that's why
like,
you always keep some rice in your pocket. Toss it.
I have some more depictions of it that I missed earlier. So it has an oily membrane, reportedly appears on both sides of the body, and their hair is usually brittle and becomes straight and rigid to the point where it is as sharp as a cheese cutter. And their
Oh,
eyes take on a reddish hue, their teeth grow razor sharp, and their
Hmm.
fingernails grow long and pointed. So apparently you
huh?
also can get cut by their hair. So
Now the hair thing, I didn't
That is.
know. I
No, I
knew they
didn't see
had
that either.
claws
I did
and
see the
sharp teeth
fingernails.
though.
yeah. So like you're just screwed all around with this thing.
Yeah.
Just don't. If you run into it, don't. That's the simplest. That's the
Yeah.
simplest way to survive. Is don't run into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't run into it and keep your legs together and don't let them swoop you.
Yeah. That's
Um,
pretty fair. I mean,
let's see.
also,
Be sure to keep jars of ash, salt, and maybe just and uncooked rice on your house. That might keep it away. It might not.
Garlic and stingray tails.
also, if you accidentally eat a live black chick and you don't want to become uh a Manananggal, a Manananggal,
Yeah,
um,
Manananggal.
so there's a way to get rid of it. So there's two ways that they found of getting it, out of your stomach. One is you know have your friends turn you upside down and then just like kind of beat you in the stomach until you cough it up, right? It's kind of
That
like a
works.
really extreme Heimlich, yeah. Or have them spin you around really fast until you throw up and you throw up the black chick.
So you spin them right round, baby, right round.
Yep.
I knew she was going to do that. I knew it.
Gotta throw them on the old, uh, or the scrambler. Or if you're ever down in West Virginia, you go to Camden Park, the Big Dipper, which is a little
I'll
bit
take your
different,
word
but a
for it.
really good way to get whiplash. That is a joke. Camden Park, do not sue me.
In a park, sponsor us.
Oh man, now I just have this very silly image of the Manananggal, like with its organs and like it's like absolutely terrifying form, just spinning around and around in a thing and just getting super dizzy.
No.
I wonder if you can
It's great.
embarrass it into leaving you alone. Just start laughing at it. Maybe it'll get embarrassed and
It'd probably just
leave you
make it
alone. And
angry.
there's always
But
that
like,
risk.
Scary Movie 10 where they pick up on the Manananggal movie and that's how they kill it.
That works just as well as anything else.
There are
Else here,
9 scary movies.
there's
No.
5 at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm
6
just
is
saying like
coming.
it might take a while.
Okay. So I know I've seen the first 3. I don't remember anything past
I've
that.
seen the opening. I saw the opening to 4 where Dr. Phil cuts off the wrong foot. Iconic.
Oh yeah. So, speaking of scary movies, right? Movies,
Huh?
horror movies. There was a movie released, was it 1927, Sean?
That's what I found. It was 1927.
Yeah, 1927, titled The Monongal, and it is well about the creature, right? As far as we know. It is the first Filipino horror movie to exist. Unfortunately, you can't go watch it. There is no known surviving copies today.
We also aren't entirely sure that the movie's about the creature and not just named after the creature. because there's no surviving copies of it, very little is known about the movie.
That is
It's a real
true,
shame because
but
it sounds
it's also named after the creature, so it's a pretty safe assumption that's what it's about.
assumptions are what get you killed. Because you can assume that woman walking towards you it was actually a woman, or it could be a Manananggal.
Yeah.
I love talking about all these badass women that I'm terrified of.
Hmm. It's okay. I mean, what was the quote from Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Fear is a powerful aphrodisiac.
Yes, yes, that is the quote.
That's just true in real life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to get into that.
If you take anything from this episode, it is that fear is a powerful aphrodisiac.
Thank you again, our ghosts and goblins, for listening to the Night Scholars. You all be good to each other. Don't answer the scratching at your window.
Or do.
But most importantly, stay safe out there.
Good night.